Hello everybody, thanks for joining me. Today I'm tying a fly called the Claret Dabbler. The hook I'm using is a Hackle H280 barbless, size 12, slightly long shank wet fly hook, and the thread I'm using is UTC 70 in red. For the tail and wings on this fly, I'm using some bronze mallard feathers. These are from Cook's Hill Fly Tying, which is a fantastic supplier. I really recommend them if you're in the UK. And for the body, I'm using some Claret seal's fur, again from Steve at Cook's Hill. The rib on this fly is just some fine silver wire. We're going to need that to hold down the palmered hackle. And speaking of hackle, I'm going to be using some brown furnace type hackle. You can use ginger or brown or really whatever you fancy. So let's get started. I'm going to cast on my thread just behind the hook eye, and I'm going to make about 5 turns backwards. This is going to define the area that I want to leave free so I have space to tie in the wings. And as you'll see a bit later, even this comes a little bit too close for comfort. I'm going to tie in the rib now, and I'm going to run that all the way down the length of the body. You can see I've spun my thread quite flat here, and it's acting almost like a floss. This is one of the reasons I really like the UTC threads, they lie very flat. I'm going to park that out of the way on the materials clip on my vise so it doesn't get in the way. And here I'm taking a pinch of about 10 to 15 fibres of the bronze mallard, and I'm tying this in as quite a long tail. This fly represents a drowned mayfly, and having it as a long tail just gives it that bit more realism. I'm tying that in down the length of the body, and you can see that with each turn I'm pinching it forward to keep it nicely centred on top of the hook shank. I've tied that up back to where I've defined my finish point, and I'm going to trim it away and secure down the tag. We can run the thread back down to the tail of the fly now, and the next step is going to be to add the dubbing. This is the last chance you have to reposition the tail. So I'm taking a small pinch of my Claret seal's fur, and I'm going to dub this on into a slightly scruffy dubbing rope. Again, you want to be able to pick this out later to give a little bit of colour and a little bit of shagginess to the body of the fly, so I'm not making it hugely tight and felted. I'm happy with that, so now I'm going to wrap the dubbing, and again just make nice tight touching turns to create the body of the fly. Be careful to avoid the hook point here, and try not to disturb your tail too much. It helps to pinch it into place. That's the body dubbed, and you can see it's quite shaggy. There's a lot of fibres sticking out, and we're actually going to tease those out a little bit more later as well. I'm waxing my thread here because we're about to tie in the hackle. To prepare the hackle, I've stripped all the barbs off one side and left a little bit of a tag at the base to tie it in. I'm going to use a cross wrap technique here, so I'm going to make a wrap over the top, a wrap going in the other direction, and this creates an X-shaped loop of thread that really holds that hackle in securely. I'm going to bend the tip of the feather forward, and I'm going to come in with my scissors and trim away the butt. This can be a little bit tricky as you don't want to cut the tying thread at the same time, but we get there in the end. With everything trimmed up, I can secure down that little bit of feather stem. You can see I've trimmed it to length so it doesn't intrude on the hook eye. With the hackle secure, I can start the palmering, and I'm going to make 2 touching turns up at the head end of the fly, and then work my way backwards in even turns down the length of the body, getting everything well bedded into the seal's fur. And you can see that this gives a nice natural slope of the fibres towards the tail of the fly, which gives a really nice profile. I'm aiming for about 5 or 6 turns. I'm debating here whether I can fit one more in, and I decide that yes I can. To secure down the hackle, we're going to use that wire that we tied in earlier. Here you want to be careful to avoid disturbing the tail too much, but I'm going to make a nice tight turn, trap down the end of that saddle feather that we used for the body hackle, and using a seesawing motion I'm going to counter wrap the hackle all the way up the length of the body. This seesawing helps to avoid trapping too many of the hackle fibres. If you do get a few caught, don't worry, because we can sort those out when we tease out the body later. It also helps to bed the rib nice and firmly into the seal's fur, and this adds a bit of durability to the fly. The advantage of counter-ribbing a fly like this is that if that hackle does split or get bitten through by a fish, the entire body hackle doesn't just unravel. I've made a few extra thread wraps up at the head end with using my rotary vise, so I'm going to reverse those now. And to secure down the wire, I'm only going to use 4 turns of thread, that's all you need. 2 tight wraps over the top, 1 in front to stop it from advancing, and another tight one over the top. Then using the bobbin holder to support the hook shank, you can helicopter off the wire, and this just helps avoid building up too much bulk up at the head end. Using my scissors, I can trim away the excess saddle hackle that we used for the body, and you can see that's a really nice curving body hackle. Here I'm using a tool from Stonfo, which is basically a bit of Velcro on a plastic paddle with a little moustache comb at the other end, but it's absolutely fantastic for teasing out bodies on flies like this. And this is going to free up any trapped hackle barbs and tease out that seal's fur a little bit. And you can see that it blends really nicely into the body hackle. You've got that warm brown and then the claret seal's fur. It's an absolutely gorgeous colour combination. For the wing, I've taken a section of my bronze mallard and I've left it attached to the stem, as you can see. I'm going to use a pinch and loop technique, and I'm going to make a cloaked wing over the top of the fly. I'm going to spread that out and position it to my liking. And the length of the wing I'm aiming for here is a little bit longer than the body hackle, but not quite as long as the tail. The way I like to think of these flies is that you're almost making a barbed arrowhead shape. So for the bottom hackle, a slightly smaller pinch of the bronze mallard, but again using the same technique, a little bit longer than the hook point, and matching up with the one on the bottom, pinch and loop down, and secure everything tightly. You can see that arrowhead shape I was talking about. Now I've actually come a bit dangerously close to the hook eye here. You might want to leave yourself a bit more space than I have, but everything works out in the end. I can trim that away, trim off any fuzzies up at the eye, and just draw everything back. Now to build up the head, I'm just going to make a few thread wraps from the eye of the hook backwards, and that secures everything down. The other advantage of UTC 70 is that when you spin it flat, like here, you can make a really nice smooth head with a rich colour. That's everything tied in, so I'm going to make about a 4 or 5 turn whip finish, secure everything down. I've had a number of people ask about my whip finisher. It's the Marc Petitjean one. It is quite expensive, but it's by far and away the nicest one I've used, especially on small flies. To strengthen the head and give it a nice glossy finish, I'm going to use a little bit of varnish. This is a new varnish I've got recently. It's from an Italian company called Giorgio Bonecci, and it's quite handy because it's got a needle built into the cap of the bottle, which saves you from getting your dubbing needles dirty. And there's the finished fly. You can see it's a really lovely colour combination, beautiful warm colours, and they're not that hard to tie once you get the hang of them. So, thank you for watching, hope you've enjoyed, I'll catch you next time.